The rain hit the windows of the community music center as Maria Chen walked through the front door. She looked around nervously, holding her old leather bag close to her chest. The bag was brown and worn out, like it had been with her for many years. Maria wore simple blue jeans and a gray sweater that had seen better days. Her long black hair was tied back in a plain ponytail. She looked like any other working woman who was tired after a long day at the office. The music center was busy that Tuesday evening. Children ran down the hallways carrying violin cases. Teenagers sat on benches tuning their guitars. Adults hurried between practice rooms with sheet music under their arms. The sound of different instruments came from every direction: pianos, drums, flutes, and voices, singing scales. Maria stood still for a moment, taking it all in. The sounds made her heart beat faster, but not from excitement. It was fear. She walked slowly to the front desk, where a young woman with bright pink hair was typing on a computer. The receptionist looked up and smiled. "Hi there. Can I help you with something?" Maria's voice came out as barely a whisper. "Hey, want to sign up for piano lessons, please? Beginner piano lessons?" She looked down at her feet as she spoke, like she was ashamed of something. The receptionist looked at Maria from head to toe. She noticed the simple clothes and the nervous way Maria held herself. "Sure, honey. That's great. Have you ever played piano before? Even a little bit?" Maria shook her head quickly. Too quickly. "No, never. I've always wanted to learn, but I never had the chance before now." Her hands were shaking slightly as she spoke. She gripped her bag tighter to hide the shaking. But this was a lie. A big lie.
Maria
Had been playing piano since she was 4 years old. By the time she was 8, she was better than most adults. At 12, she was performing in big concert halls across Europe. Famous conductors knew her name. Music magazines wrote articles about her. She had won competitions that made her famous in the classical music world. Maria's real name wasn't even Maria Chen. It was Maria Volkov. She had studied at the best music schools in the world. Teachers had called her a genius. Other musicians had been jealous of her talent. She could play pieces that were so difficult that only a few people in the whole world could master them. But when Maria was 18, everything changed. Her younger brother Alex was in a terrible car accident. He was only 16. The doctors said he would never walk again. Family needed money for his treatment. Lots of money. More money than they had ever seen. Maria's parents worked normal jobs. They couldn't pay for the special doctors and therapy Alex needed. So Maria made a choice. She gave up her music career. She sold her expensive piano. She stopped performing. She took the money she had earned from concerts and competitions and gave it all to help Alex. Then she got a regular job in an office. She changed her name and moved to a different city. She wanted to disappear from the music world completely. For 15 years, Maria hadn't touched a piano. Not once. She told herself she didn't miss it. She told herself she was happy with her quiet life. But lately, something had been calling to her. She would walk past music stores and feel her heart ache. She would hear classical music on the radio and remember what it felt like to make those sounds with her own hands. That's why she was here now. She just wanted to play again, but she couldn't let anyone know who she really was. She couldn't handle people expecting her to be the genius she used to be. She just wanted to sit at a piano and remember why she had loved music before it became her job. The receptionist handed her a paper with class schedules on it. "Mrs. Patterson teaches our adult beginner class on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She's really good with people who have never played before. Room 7, down that hallway." She pointed to a long corridor with many doors. "Class starts in 10 minutes. Maria thanked her and walked down the hall. As she passed the practice rooms, she could hear people playing inside. Someone was working on scales. She could tell they were having trouble with their fingering. Another person was playing a simple song, missing notes here and there. The sounds made her feel sad and excited at the same time. She found room 7 and took a deep breath before opening the door. Inside, 8 other adults were sitting around 2 black grand pianos. They looked friendly and relaxed. Some were young, college students. Others were middle-aged. A few looked like they were retired. They were all talking and laughing about their music lessons. A woman with gray hair and a stern face clapped her hands loudly. This had to be Mrs. Patterson. She was wearing a black dress and looked very serious about music. "Welcome back, everyone. And I see we have a new student today." She looked directly at Maria. "Please introduce yourself to the class, dear." Maria felt her face turn red. She hated being the center of attention. "My name is Maria. I work in an office downtown. I've never played piano before, but I've always loved listening to music." Her voice was so quiet that some people had to lean forward to hear her. Mrs. Patterson nodded like she approved. "Well, Maria, you've come to the right place," he believed. "And starting with the basics here, no shortcuts. Everyone learns the same way, step by step. We don't let anyone jump ahead just because they think they're special." The teacher showed everyone how to sit properly at the piano. She explained how to hold their hands and where to put their fingers. Then she had each student practice simple exercises on the keyboard. When it was Maria's turn, she had to do something. That felt terrible. She had to pretend she didn't know how to play. As Maria put her hands on the piano keys for the first time in 15 years, she wanted to cry. The keys felt like old friends greeting her. Her fingers knew exactly where to go, but instead of playing beautifully, she made herself look clumsy and confused. She played a simple C major scale, C, A, B, C, B, C. But she did it wrong. On purpose. She missed notes. She used the wrong fingers. She made it sound choppy and uncertain. Inside her heart, she was screaming. But this was like asking a professional dancer to pretend they couldn't walk. "That's okay, Maria," Mrs. Patterson said, but she sounded a little impatient. "It takes time to learn. You'll need to practice at home every day if you want to improve." The other students were very kind to her. A college girl named Sarah said, "Don't worry, I was terrible when I started too. It gets easier, I promise." An older man named Robert added, "We're all here to help each other learn." As the class continued, Maria kept pretending to struggle with things that were as easy as breathing to her. When Mrs. Patterson played a simple chord, Maria acted like it was the most complicated thing she had ever heard. Like when they practiced finger exercises. She made her movements stiff and awkward. But the hardest part wasn't fooling Mrs. Patterson or the other students. The hardest part was lying to herself. Every time she touched those piano keys and held back her true ability, she felt like she was burying a part of her soul. After class ended, Maria was the last person to leave. She sat at the piano for a moment after everyone was gone, looking. At the keys, she pressed one key very softly. Middle C, the sound was pure and clear. For just a second, she let herself remember what it felt like to be Maria Volkov, the girl who could make magic with her fingers. Then she closed the piano lid, picked up her old bag, and walked out into the rain. She told herself she was doing the right thing. She told herself this was what she wanted to be, just another beginner trying to learn something new. But as she walked to her car, Maria couldn't shake the feeling that she had just made a terrible mistake. 3 weeks had passed since Maria started her piano lessons. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, she walked into room 7 with the same nervous smile and quiet voice. Every class, she sat at the piano and pretended to be the worst student Mrs. Patterson had ever taught. It was getting harder each time. The other students in the class were making progress. Sarah, the college girl with blonde hair, could now play Mary Had a Little Lamb without looking at her fingers. Robert, the retired man with kind eyes, had learned 3 simple songs and was working on Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Even Mrs. Johnson, who was 70 years old and had arthritis in her hands, could play basic chords without making mistakes. But Maria seemed stuck. She still struggled with the simplest scales. She couldn't remember which fingers to use for which keys. When Mrs. Patterson asked her to play a C major chord, Maria would stare at the piano like she had never seen it before. "Maria, you really need to practice more at home," Mrs. Patterson said after another difficult lesson. Her voice sounded tired and frustrated. "Perhaps you should think about whether music is really for you. Some people just don't have the natural ability needed to learn piano." The words hit Maria like a punch to the stomach. She wanted to scream that she had more natural ability than anyone in the room. She wanted to show Mrs. Patterson what real piano playing looked like. But instead, she just nodded sadly and said, "I'll try harder, Mrs. Patterson. I really want to learn." The other students felt sorry for her. After class, they would gather around and offer help. "Don't listen to her," Sarah whispered. "Mrs. Patterson can be mean sometimes. You're doing fine." Robert patted Maria's shoulder gently. "I have an idea. Why don't you come to my house this weekend? I have a piano, and we can practice together." Sometimes it helps to work with another beginner. Her kindness made Maria feel even worse about lying to them. These people had become her friends, cared about her success, and worried when she seemed upset. They didn't know that every mistake she made was fake, and every struggle was an act. During the 4th week, something almost went terribly wrong. Maria arrived early for class, as she always did. She liked having a few minutes to sit quietly before the others came. The classroom was empty, and the 2 grand pianos sat waiting in the evening light from the windows. Maria looked around to make sure no one was coming. Then she walked to the piano and sat down. Just for a moment, she wanted to feel what it was like to play properly again. She placed her hands on the keys and began to play Chopin's Minute Waltz. It was a piece she had learned when she was 12 years old. Her fingers moved across the keys like they were dancing. The music filled the room with beautiful, complicated sounds that seemed to make the air itself sing. For 3 minutes, Maria forgot everything. She forgot about pretending to be a beginner. She forgot about hiding her past. She forgot about the pain of giving up her career. All that existed was the music flowing through her fingers and the joy of playing something. Perfectly, she was so lost in the music that she didn't hear. Footsteps in the hallway. Mrs. Patterson had come back to get her reading glasses, which she had left on the piano. As she walked toward room 7, she heard the most incredible piano playing coming from inside. Someone was playing a very difficult piece, and they were playing it like a professional musician. Mrs. Patterson stopped outside the door and listened. The music was flawless. Every note was perfect. The timing was exact. Whoever was playing had years and years of advanced training. This was not the kind of playing you heard at a community music center. This was concert-level performance. She quietly pushed the door open and looked inside. What she saw made no sense at all. Maria Chen, the hopeless beginner who couldn't play a simple scale, was sitting at the piano, playing one of Chopin's most difficult pieces. Her posture was perfect. Her hands moved with the grace of a master pianist. Her face showed the deep concentration of someone who had been playing classical music for decades. Mrs. Patterson stood frozen in the doorway, trying to understand what she was seeing. How could the same person who struggled with Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star be playing Chopin like this? Suddenly, Maria became aware that someone was watching her. She stopped playing immediately and spun around on the piano bench. When she saw Mrs. Patterson standing there, her face went completely white. I was trying to... Maria stammered, her hands shaking. She quickly started pressing random keys, making ugly sounds. "I was just messing around trying to figure out this chord thing you taught us." Mrs. Patterson stared at her for a long moment. Her mind was trying to make sense of what she had heard versus what she was seeing now. Maria was back to looking confused and clumsy, pressing keys like she didn't know what she was doing. "That was interesting, Maria," Mrs. Patterson said. Slowly, she walked into the room and looked at the piano, then back at Maria. "But you should stick to your lesson material for now. Playing random notes won't help you learn properly." Maria nodded quickly, too quickly. "You're right, Mrs. Patterson. I'm sorry. I know I should focus on the basics." As the other students began arriving for class, Mrs. Patterson couldn't stop thinking about what she had heard. She'd been teaching piano for over 20 years. She knew the difference between random noise and skilled playing. What she had heard was definitely not random noise. During the lesson that night, Mrs. Patterson watched Maria very carefully. She noticed small things she had missed before. Sometimes Maria's hand position was perfect before she quickly changed. It too looked wrong. Once, she started to play a scale correctly before stopping and playing it badly on purpose. After class, Mrs. Patterson stayed behind to think. Something was very wrong with this situation. In all her years of teaching, she had never had a student who pretended to be worse than they actually were. Usually, students tried to seem more advanced, not less skilled, over the next few days. Mrs. Patterson couldn't get Maria out of her mind. She kept remembering the beautiful music she had heard. Coming from room 7, she started to wonder if Maria was playing some kind of game with her. But why would anyone do that? What reason could someone have for pretending to be a beginner when they could clearly play at an advanced level? Mrs. Patterson decided she needed to find out the truth. She began planning a way to test Maria, to force her to show her real abilities. She didn't know Maria's story or why she was hiding her talent. She was determined to solve this mystery. Meanwhile, Maria went home each night feeling more and more guilty about her deception. The close call with Mrs. Patterson had scared her badly. She knew she was taking a big risk by continuing with the lessons. But she also didn't want to give up the one small joy she had found in her quiet life. The other students had become important to her. Sarah always saved her a seat and asked about her day. Robert brought her sheet music he thought might help her learn. Mrs. Johnson shared cookies and told funny stories about her own struggles with the piano. These people cared about Maria Chen, the struggling office worker who just wanted to learn music. They didn't know about Maria Volkov, the former prodigy with the complicated past. For the first time in 15 years, Maria had friends who liked her for who she was. Not for what she could do, but she was starting to realize that living a lie was harder than she had expected. Every fake mistake felt like betraying herself. Every pretend struggle made her feel ashamed of hiding her gift. Something was going to have to change soon. Maria just didn't know what that change would be, or how much it would cost her. The truth has a way of coming out, whether we want it to or not. 2 months had passed since Maria started her piano lessons. The spring recital was coming up in just 4 weeks. And Mrs. Patterson had been busy choosing pieces for each student to perform. She had picked easy songs that matched everyone's skill level. Sarah would play for Elise by Beethoven, but a simple version with just the melody. Robert had chosen a basic jazz song called Autumn Leaves with easy chords. Mrs. Johnson would play Amazing Grace in the key of C major. All the other students had picked songs they could handle without too much trouble for Maria. Mrs. Patterson had originally chosen Happy Birthday with simple accompaniment. It was the kind of piece that even a struggling beginner could manage with enough practice. But over the past few weeks, Mrs. Patterson's suspicions about Maria had grown stronger and stronger. She couldn't forget the beautiful music she had heard coming from room 7 that evening. She had started watching Maria more carefully during every lesson, and she kept noticing little things that didn't make sense. Sometimes Maria would start to play something correctly before catching herself and making it sound bad. Her fingers seemed to know where to go before her brain told them to look confused. Mrs. Patterson had been teaching piano for 23 years. She knew when someone was hiding their true abilities. She was sure that Maria was not the hopeless beginner she pretended to be. But she couldn't understand why anyone would want to fake being bad at piano, so she decided to set a trap. On Tuesday evening, all the students were sitting around the pianos discussing their recital pieces. Everyone seemed excited except Maria, who looked nervous about performing in front of people. "I've been thinking about our recital program," Mrs. Patterson announced suddenly. "I believe we should challenge ourselves more this year." "Maria, I'm changing your piece." She walked over to her desk and picked up a thick book of sheet music. Everyone watched as she flipped through the pages, looking for something specific. Finally, she found what she was looking for and placed the music in front of Maria. Maria looked down at the page and felt like she might faint. It was Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto. No, 2 in C minor, one of the most difficult pieces ever written. For piano, the first page alone was covered with notes that looked like tiny black insects crawling across the staff lines. There were complex chords that required large hands and years of training. The rhythm was so complicated that even advanced students struggled with it. This was not a piece for beginners. This was not even a piece for intermediate students. This was a piece that only professional concert pianists attempted to play. Mrs. Patterson, Maria said, her voice barely above a whisper. I think there's been a mistake. This looks incredibly difficult. I can barely play Mary Had a Little Lamb without making mistakes. The other students gathered around to look at the music. Their eyes grew wide as they saw the complexity of the notation. Sarah put her hand over her mouth in shock. Oh my goodness, this looks impossible, she said. Robert looked concerned. Mrs. Patterson, are you sure this is appropriate? This looks like something you'd hear at Carnegie Hall, not at a community center recital. But Mrs. Patterson was not backing down. Her eyes stayed fixed on Maria's face, watching for any reaction that might give away the truth. Nonsense, she said firmly. I believe in pushing my students to reach their full potential. Maria, you've been taking lessons for 2 months now. It's time you tackled something more challenging. Maria felt trapped. Her heart was beating so fast, she thought everyone could hear it. If she refused to try the piece, it would seem strange. After all, she had been coming to lessons faithfully and claiming she wanted to learn. But if she agreed to attempt it, she would either have to reveal her true abilities or fail completely in front of an audience. I have complete faith in your abilities, Maria, Mrs. Patterson continued, her voice sweet, but with an edge to it. Unless, of course, you don't think you're capable of learning it? The challenge in her voice was unmistakable, Maria realized. That her teacher suspected something, and this was a test. Mrs. Patterson was trying to force her into a corner where she would have to choose between giving up or showing her real skills. Sarah looked worried. Mrs. Patterson, this really doesn't seem fair. Maria is still learning basic chords. This piece is way too advanced, and Robert agreed. Maybe you should give her something a little easier for her first recital. But Mrs. Patterson held up her hand to stop their protests. Maria is perfectly capable of rising to this challenge. Aren't you, Maria? All eyes in the room turned to Maria. She could feel the weight of their attention pressing down on her. Her fellow students looked concerned and supportive. They were worried about her being set up for failure. But Mrs. Patterson looked determined and slightly suspicious. Maria's mind raced through her options. She could refuse to try the piece, but that might seem suspicious too. She could quit the class entirely, which would solve the problem but would mean giving up the only musical outlet she had found. Or she could accept the challenge and figure out how to handle it later. I'll try my best, she said quietly, the words feeling like they were sealing her fate. Mrs. Patterson smiled, but it wasn't a completely kind smile. Wonderful. That's the spirit I like to see in my students. You'll have 4 weeks to prepare. Expect to see significant progress by next week's lesson. As the class ended and students began packing up their music, several of them approached Maria with worried expressions. Are you sure about this? Sarah asked quietly. That piece looks absolutely impossible. Maybe you should talk to the director about getting a different teacher. Robert nodded in agreement. I've been playing for months now, and I wouldn't even attempt something like that. It's not fair to ask a beginner to play at that level. Mrs. Johnson, the elderly woman, patted Maria's arm gently. Dear, there's no shame in asking for something more suitable. That woman is being unreasonable. Their concern and kindness made Maria feel even worse about her deception. These people had become her friends. They cared about her and wanted to protect her from what they saw as an unfair challenge. They had no idea that she could play the piece perfectly, probably better than Mrs. Patterson herself. Thank you all for caring, Maria said, trying to keep her voice steady. I'll figure something out. But as she walked to her car that evening, Maria felt like her world was falling apart. She had been so careful to keep her secret, but now she was being forced into an impossible situation. If she played the piece badly, she would embarrass herself in front of the audience and disappoint her new friends who would be watching. If she played it well, she would have to explain how a supposed beginner could suddenly perform at a professional level, and if she quit the class now, she would lose the one thing that had brought joy back into her life, the chance to be around music and musicians again, even if she had to pretend to be someone she wasn't. That night, Maria sat in her small apartment staring at the Rachmaninoff score. She knew every note by heart. She had performed this piece with orchestras in Europe when she was 19 years old. Critics had written that her interpretation was breathtaking and mature beyond her years. But that was Maria Volkov, the prodigy who no longer existed. Now she was Maria Chen, a struggling office worker who just wanted to learn piano as a hobby. The question was, which Maria would walk onto that recital stage in 4 weeks? The next week came and went, but Maria didn't show up for piano class. Mrs. Patterson wasn't surprised. She had expected that her challenge would either force Maria to reveal her true abilities or make her run away completely. Expect was the phone call she received on Friday morning. "Mrs. Patterson, this is David Kim, the director of the music center," the voice on the phone said. "I need to talk to you about one of your students, Maria Chen. Something very interesting has come to light." Mrs. Patterson felt her heart skip a beat. "What kind of interesting?" "Yesterday, I received a call from Professor Martinez at the State Conservatory. He was asking if we had a student named Maria Chen enrolled here. Apparently, someone sent him a video clip from our security cameras showing her playing in one of our practice rooms." Mrs. Patterson gripped the phone tighter. "A security video?" "Yes, our cameras record everything for safety reasons. Professor Martinez said the video shows Maria playing Rachmaninoff's piano concerto. No, too perfectly. He recognized her immediately, even though it's been many years since he last saw her." The room seemed to spin around Mrs. Patterson. "I don't understand. Are you saying Maria can actually play advanced pieces?" "Mrs. Patterson, Maria isn't just someone who can play advanced pieces. Professor Martinez told me she used to be one. Of his most gifted students at the conservatory, her name back then was Maria Volkov. She was a child prodigy who performed with major orchestras across Europe." Mrs. Patterson sank into her chair, feeling dizzy. "That's impossible. Maria can barely play a simple scale. She's the worst student I've ever taught." Professor Martinez explained more about her background. David continued. "She won the International Young Artists Competition when she was 16. She was being called the next great pianist of her generation. Then, about 15 years ago, she just disappeared from the music world completely. No one knew what happened to her." After hanging up the phone, Mrs. Patterson sat in silence for a long time. She thought about all the lessons with Maria, all the times she had gotten frustrated with her lack of progress. She remembered the evening when she had heard that beautiful music coming from room 7, and how Maria had pretended it was just random noise. Now everything made sense. Maria hadn't been a hopeless beginner trying to learn. She had been a world-class pianist pretending to be hopeless. Meanwhile, Maria was sitting in her small apartment, staring at the phone. She'd been avoiding the music center all week, but she couldn't stop thinking about her fellow students. They had been so kind to her, so worried about the impossible piece Mrs. Patterson had assigned. She wondered if they thought she had given up and quit. Her phone rang, showing the music center's number. Maria almost didn't answer, but something made her pick it up. "Maria, this is David Kim from the music center. I was hoping we could talk. I think there might be more to your story than what you've shared with us." Maria's stomach dropped. "I don't know what you mean." "Professor Martinez from the State Conservatory recognized you from our security footage. He's been wondering what happened to Maria Volkov for 15 years. He said you just vanished at the height of your career." The silence stretched between them. Maria closed her eyes, knowing that her carefully built new life was crumbling around her. "That person doesn't exist anymore," she said quietly. "Just Maria Chen now. I work in an office, and I was trying to learn piano as a hobby. That's all." "But why?" David asked gently. "Why hide such an incredible gift? And why pretend to be a beginner when you could be sharing your talent with the world?" For the first time in 15 years, Maria found herself telling someone the complete truth. The words came pouring out like water from a broken dam, she told him about her brother Alex's car accident when she was 18. She explained how the doctors said he would never walk again without expensive surgery and years of physical therapy. She described the crushing weight of the medical bills that her family couldn't afford. "My parents worked ordinary jobs," she said, her voice breaking. "They couldn't pay for what Alex needed. I was making good money from concerts and competitions. But it still wasn't enough. So I made a choice." She had sold everything, her piano, her music library, even the jewelry she had received as prizes. She had given up every concert booking and turned down scholarship offers to famous music schools. She had taken all the money and given it to her family for Alex's treatment. The worst part wasn't giving up the money, Maria continued. It was giving up who I was. Maria Volkov was this person everyone expected great things from. Teachers, critics, other musicians, they all had plans for my future. The pressure was enormous, and when I was dealing with Alex's accident, I just couldn't handle it anymore. She explained how she had changed her name and moved to a different city. She got a job in an office where no one knew about her musical background. For 15 years, she had lived a quiet, anonymous life. I came to the music center because I missed playing so much it was making me sad every day, she said. But I couldn't bear the thought of people knowing who I used to be. I just wanted to sit at a piano and remember what it felt like to love music without any pressure or expectations. David listened patiently as she told her story. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Maria, what happened to your brother? Is he okay now? For the first time during the conversation, Maria smiled. Alex is fine. The surgery worked. He not only learned to walk again, he became a physical therapist. He helps other people who have been in accidents like his. He got married last year and has a baby daughter. He never knew what you gave up for him. No. My parents and I agreed never to tell him. Didn't want him to feel guilty about my choice. As far as Alex knows, I just decided that performing wasn't for me anymore. David was amazed by her story. So you sacrificed your entire career to save your brother, and you never even wanted credit for it. It wasn't a sacrifice, Maria said. Firmly, Alex is my little brother. I would do it again without hesitation. But I do miss music. That's why I came to your center. I thought I could just be a regular person learning to play piano for fun. But Mrs. Patterson suspected something? Maria laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. She's a good teacher. She knew I was hiding something. That's why she gave me that impossible piece. She was trying to force me to show my real abilities. Now everyone will know the truth. Yes, Maria said sadly. I guess my quiet life is over, but David had a different idea. What if it doesn't have to be? What if it doesn't have to be over? David had asked Maria on the phone. His words stayed in her mind all weekend. On Monday, he called again with a suggestion that surprised her. I talked to Mrs. Patterson and explained your situation, David. Said she feels terrible about putting you in such a difficult position. She wants to apologize to you personally. Would you be willing to come in and talk to your class? Maria's heart raced. I don't know if I can face them. They trusted me, and I lied to them for months. They care about you, Maria. Sarah has called 3 times asking if you're okay. Robert stopped by yesterday looking worried. They think Mrs. Patterson scared you away with that impossible assignment. After much convincing, Maria agreed to come to the music center on Tuesday evening. As she walked down the familiar hallway toward room 7, her hands were shaking. She could hear voices inside her classmates were already there, probably wondering where she had been. She took a deep breath and opened the door. Maria. Sarah jumped up from her seat at the piano. We were so worried about you. Are you okay? Robert stood up too, smiling with relief. We thought you might have quit because of that crazy piece Mrs. Patterson gave you. Mrs. Johnson hurried over and hugged her. Oh dear, we've been so concerned. That woman was completely unreasonable with you. Maria felt tears starting in her eyes. These people cared about her so much, and they still didn't know the truth. Mrs. Patterson was standing near the window, looking uncomfortable and ashamed. Everyone, please sit down, Maria said quietly. There's something I need to tell you all. Something important. The room grew silent. Everyone could tell from Maria's serious tone that this wasn't going to be ordinary class conversation. I haven't been completely honest with you about who I am, Maria began, her voice trembling slightly. My real name is Maria Volkov, and I used to be a professional pianist. Sarah's eyes widened. What do you mean, professional? Maria took a deep breath and told them everything. She explained about being a child prodigy, about performing in concert halls across Europe, about winning competitions and studying at famous music schools. She told them about her brother's accident and why she had given up her career. So when I came here saying I was a beginner, I was lying, she finished. I could already play everything Mrs. Patterson was teaching, and much more. I was pretending to be bad at piano, because I just wanted to enjoy music again, without any pressure or expectations. The room was completely quiet for a long moment. Maria looked at each of her classmates' faces, trying to read their reactions. Were they angry? Disappointed? Did they feel betrayed? Finally, Sarah spoke first. "So, you gave up being a famous pianist to save your brother's life?" "That's incredible, Maria. That's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard." Robert nodded enthusiastically. "And you came here because you missed playing music, not because you wanted to show off or make us feel bad about our abilities." "That makes perfect sense." Mrs. Johnson reached over and patted Maria's hand. "Oh, honey, what a sacrifice you made for your family. You must have loved your brother very much." Maria was amazed. Instead of being angry about her deception, they seemed to understand and admire her even more. "But wait," said Tom, a young man who usually sat in the back. "If you can play like a professional, why were you pretending to struggle with simple songs? That must have been really hard." Maria smiled sadly. "It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Every time I had to play badly on purpose, it felt like I was betraying myself. But I was afraid that if you knew the truth, everything would change. You wouldn't see me as just Maria anymore. You'd see me as this former prodigy with all these expectations." Mrs. Patterson finally stepped forward. Her face was red with embarrassment. "Maria, I owe you a huge apology. I suspected you were hiding your abilities, but I had no idea about your background or your reasons. I thought you were just playing some kind of game with me. Giving you that Rachmaninoff piece was my way of trying to force you to admit you could play better than you were showing." Maria said, "You're a good teacher. You could tell something wasn't right." "But what happens now?" Sarah asked. "Are you going to leave our class? Are you going to go back to being a professional pianist?" Maria shook her head quickly. "No, I don't want to go back to that life. That world is too competitive and stressful for me now, but I also can't keep pretending to be a beginner. It's too painful." That's when David, who had been standing quietly by the door, stepped forward with his suggestion. "What if we changed the whole idea of this class?" he said. "Instead of it being about skill level, what if it became about people who love music and want to share that love with each other? Maria could play at her real level, but she could also help teach the rest of you. You could all learn from her experience, and she could have the supportive, pressure-free environment she's looking for." The students looked at each other with excitement. "It sounds amazing," Sarah said. "I would love to learn from someone with Maria's background, and we could still be friends, right?" Robert asked. "Your musical ability doesn't change who you are as a person." Maria felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. "You really wouldn't mind having me in the class, knowing what you know now?" "Are you kidding?" Mrs. Johnson laughed. "Having a former prodigy as our classmate. We're the luckiest students in the world." Mrs. Patterson smiled for the first time. "That evening, I think this could work beautifully. Maria, would you be willing to help me teach? You could share your knowledge while still being a student yourself." 3 weeks later, the spring recital arrived. Maria had decided to perform Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto. No, 2 after all, but not as a test or a challenge. She played it as a gift to her new friends who had accepted her for exactly who she was, both the struggling beginner she had pretended to be and the accomplished musician she had always been. As the final notes of the concerto filled the recital hall, the audience erupted in thunderous applause. But Maria's eyes were focused on the front row where her classmates were cheering louder than anyone else. Sarah was crying happy tears, Robert was standing and clapping, and Mrs. Johnson was beaming with pride. After 15 years of hiding from music, Maria had finally found her way back, not as the child prodigy who had been burdened with everyone else's dreams, but as an adult who had learned that the most beautiful performances come from sharing your authentic self with people who love you just as you are. She had discovered that sometimes the greatest gift you can give is not hiding your light, but letting it shine in a place where it can warm the hearts of true friends.